Yeah, it's time to do an unhaul.
Hi, I'm Nikki, the Obsessive Bookseller. Welcome to my unhaul video. I have so many books that have just been stacking up underneath this table, and it's driving me crazy. And every time I think, oh, I should list those on Pango, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to film a video first. So it's happening today. A lot of these books were from my Read, Burn, Hoard project, and many more of them are ones that I'm replacing with nicer hardcover editions. And I do get asked this a lot. Like, I have quite a few books here without covers on them. This is from my book selling days. There was a process where it cost the publisher more money to ship these mass market paperbacks back than it did for us to just recycle them. So we ripped off the front cover and sent it back to get credit, essentially, from the publisher, indicating that we didn't sell it. In fact, almost every mass market has this little disclaimer at the bottom. It said, if you purchase this book without a cover, you should be aware that it is stolen property and was reported as unsold and destroyed to the publisher, and neither the author nor the publisher has received any payment for this stripped book. Now, they let booksellers take a few of these because obviously the more you can get booksellers reading and talking about different works, the better off you are. So I have a whole bunch of them because I spent 12 years as a bookseller. First in the unhaul, this really nice copy of Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward. I found these in hardcover. One thing led to another. I bought the second book in hardcover on Book Outlet, and I was like, oh, now I need to go get the rest of them in hardcover. And I have, and it almost cost me a kidney, but in the meantime, I don't need the first one anymore, so we're letting that go. Queen of Dragons by Shanna Abe. This is book like 4 in the Drakon series. It's a romance fantasy. I was debating back and forth several times on whether or not to get rid of this book. I got it from my mom. I love this author's YA, The Sweetest Dark. It is so good, and it's set in the same world, but I really hated the first book in this series. Like, there were a lot of relational issues that I think could be addressed. And the rest of the series might be good, but they're available at my library, and so I feel like I don't really need to hang on to a single hardcover. I have Smoke Bitten by Patricia Briggs. I got this on Book Outlet, and it is signed. And the funny thing is, it gets a publisher remainder. I bought it to replace my current one. And then I got all nostalgic, and I'm like, but this one I bought directly when it came out from the publisher, and it's got sentimental value, and I have other books signed by Patricia Briggs, so do I really need to hang on to this copy and replace it, especially since it has the remainder dot? That never bothers me, except for in this circumstance. So I'm going to sell the signed one and keep my unsigned normal ass one. Sometimes I'm weird when it comes to books. I have The Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham. I am replacing them in hardcovers. I did not know Tor came out with standard sized hardcovers for these because I bought them in paperback when they very first came out at my bookstore when I worked there. Yeah, usually they send the hardcovers first and then you get the paperback versions a year later. It's a lot quicker than that now. But now I don't need these because I have purchased other editions. But these are really nice. They're like duology bind-ups. In my hunt to replace my Robin Ha Brain Wilds collection, I got kind of a yellowed, beat-up copy from World of Books, and I am not happy with World of Books. Every package I've gotten so far has been sent in this really thin cardboard, like almost as thin as a piece of paper, and it's like, oh, no kidding, some of the books got damaged, so I'm probably not going to order from them anymore. But they have a sticker band-aid up here, like a sales sticker band-aid, which I think is really funny. Like, how is that any better than a sales sticker? I found a copy that it's in a little bit better condition and I like more. Guys, book club editions tear my soul out. I thought I was getting the standard side version of this, and to be honest, I'm not even positive this comes in a standard size. This is Altogether Dead by Charlaine Harris, and I have two. This one is a signed copy of Altogether Dead by Charlaine Harris, and yeah, when will I learn my lesson? And these ones, it would have been more hassle and more expensive to return them than, like, more money, essentially, and I would have only ended up with like $5 difference, whatever. Dragon Haven, this is the ugly US edition that I have replaced. And then City of Dragons, this is a less ugly US edition that I've replaced, but at least the ones I have now are actually matching. Because, like, seriously. For such a big author, you think it would have taken more care, but you know what? The HarperCollins published this one where I believe Tor had done everything up to that point. Nope, Bantam Books. I did a huge declutter my mass market paperbacks with me, and one of the casualties was To the King, a Daughter, The Circle of Oak, You, Ash, and Rowan. And I have these in hardcover, and I'm like, do I really need to hang on to the paperbacks? Truthfully, I should get rid of the hardcover as well, because it wasn't that good of a series. I have a really hard time with Andre Norton's writing. She's really dry. She doesn't get to the point. Like, her writing is so unclear and convoluted. I have a really hard time with her, but yet I have 2 copies of that series because they're Luis Royo covers, and I think they are gorgeous. My classic mass market paperback of Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey. I picked this up at a used bookstore because I was like, oh, it's the classic cover and everything, and it's beautiful. Not one of my favorites. I know that's like blasphemy, but it's one of the first dragon books I read, and I didn't like it compared to my other dragon books. Anne McCaffrey and Andre Norton, I feel like their writing is unnecessarily dense. I did really like the White Dragon of this one. It's the 3rd book, but I have a 3-in-1 bind-up that I like better, so keeping that instead. I'm finally getting rid of my really old copy of Mariel of Redwall by Brian Jacks. This is the one I physically read, but it didn't match the rest of the series. So I finally replaced it with the right edition, and I've been hanging on to this one just because of sentimentality, and I think I'm finally ready to let it go. Just let it go. I have a signed art, personalized, of Darkness Hunts by Carrie Arthur, shipped all the way from Australia because I won a contest, and I really don't like the series. I really love a lot of the things that this author does, but this series, I've tried 2 of them, and they're some of the worst, like, paranormal romancy books that I've read. It just didn't stack up. I love her Riley Jensen stuff. Like, a lot of people, I'm sure if I read the comments on Goodreads for that one, it would be, like, just tearing it apart completely. But I liked that one. This is a spin-off series, and it wasn't as good. It was really throwaway. So I'm just finally ready to bite the bullet and let that stuff go. Dark Heart by Margaret Wise and David Baldwin. This is the first book in a series that won't be finished, and I probably won't ever read it. Plus, looking at the back of the book and seeing what it's about, it really doesn't sound up my alley, even though, like, the cover looks cool, the idea looks cool, but for a book that I'm only kind of interested anyway, that's not even a complete series, like, I'm not judging, but I just don't think I'll ever get around to it. So, in the interest of space, I have the Zoe Martinique series by Phaedra Weldon. Wraith is the first book. These are all strip copies. This one was also a casualty of Read Burn Hoard. Sometimes the Goodreads reviews, like, I just look at them to see kind of what the problems were, and then I make my own decision whether or not I want to read, whatever. This one, I was already not sure about it, and the #1 comment that was on there is that the character is really unlikable. She's very immature, and that's one of the few things that, like, I like unlikable characters. I don't like immaturity. I don't like stupid characters. So that is why this one is biting the dust. And I figured I can always get a digital copy. Shadow Reader by Sandy Williams. This is a paranormal romance urban thing that I might try at some point, but I don't need a coverless copy of it. I've already bookmarked it for, like, a library pickup or whatever. I have Avenged and Ruined. These are books 1 and 2 in the Ruined series by Amy Tintera. I like this author. I'm getting rid of these because I have replaced them in hardcover because I found them cheap. Not because I've read the book or know I like it or whatever, just because I found them. I supported the Kickstarter for Sword of Kaijin and got the really nice hardcover. And so even though I really loved this edition, I don't need to. I didn't love it that much. Like, it was a good book. It was really good. It was probably worth having a special edition for, but I don't need to. A couple of random series starts that never got second books by Lauren DeStefano. Don't need those. Coverless copies of The Magickers by Emily Drake. This is one of those where I actually did let Goodreads talk me out of reading them. Get the impression it's like a poor man's Harry Potter. A lot of comments on how it wasn't written very well. It focused on the mundane, and the exciting things were really convoluted and weird. The plot didn't go anywhere. Basically, if you've read the back of the book and you know the essence of the story, you've gotten everything that you'll get out of reading a 200-page book. So that one was kind of hard to let go because I'd been hanging on to them with hopes for so long, but we're doing it. Getting rid of a couple of my later Feist books. I've read everything in the Rift War saga, and I don't even know if I have these in hardcover or not, but I'm tired of hanging on to, like, coverless copies of the paperbacks, because if I do want to collect to this point, I want the nice ones. I love early Rift War. Basically anything through Talon of the Nighthawk, like that trilogy. Really love that. The ones after that were a little bit okay, but then the series just kind of got phoned in for me after that. I have a huge rant on that. Maybe I'll do a video at some point. The Bone Doll's Twin and the Oracle Queen by Llewellyn Flewelling. I read the first book with my patrons. Basically a self-described gothic fantasy story. It was okay. It was like a 3-star read. I enjoyed it. I'm not as excited about continuing as I want to be, but at some point I probably will pick up the second book, especially if my patrons read it. But I don't really want the coverless copies. Like it wasn't that good. It was 3-star or below, and I'm trying to filter a lot of those out of my collection. Lion of Senate by Jennifer Fallon. Also read this for Patreon Book Club, and coverless copy. Hated this book. Hated it so much. I think I had a review for this published recently, and I think my loathing for it developed more after time. I filmed that one right after reading it, and the longer I sat on it and thought on it, the more I just like, oh, I viscerally hate this book. I read halfway through the second one with my patrons, and the hate just like grew deeper. I don't usually get angry at books, but that one pissed me off. So burning that. Coverless copy of Beyond the Hanging Wall by Sarah Douglas. I really wanted to read this one, but I read The Dark Glass Mountain, and it basically gives every single last important spoiler out of this book. If I had known that there was an order to those, I would have read that one first, but now it's too late, so I may as well get rid of my ugly copy. Jennifer Scales and the Ancient Furnace by Maurice Janice Davidson and Anthony Alongi. I don't know. This is one of those that I've mentally bookmarked if I'm bored and want a mundane dragon shifting story. I love the cover on here. I'll pick it up digitally, but the author has soured my taste for reading anything by her with another series that I tried, her mermaid one. I didn't get very far into that one. So yeah, I think I'm okay letting that one go. As mentioned, the Dark Angels series, this is more in that one. I love the covers on these. I don't know. I just think the color combinations are really beautiful, but hated the books. Like some of the worst urban fantasy / paranormal I've ever read. It was awful. Cerulean Sins by Laurel K. Hamilton. This is part of the Anita Blake trilogy series, and I think this is as far as I got. Kind of a not so nice thing happens to a young child in this book, and it kind of put me off the series, and I haven't gone back yet. Like, I plan to continue because I was enjoying it. The first 4 especially were phenomenal. And then it, kind of goes off the rails a little bit. I hear it comes back on the rails as the series goes. But anyway, I had hardcovers for everything up to that point, so I found a hardcover for that one pretty cheap and picked it up. Threshold by Sarah Douglas. Same thing with Beyond the Hanging Wall. If you read the Dark Glass Mountain series, then you know everything that happens in there. Like, everything. So I don't need to read that one anymore. I have Phaedra's Trilogy by Jacqueline Carey. The second one is a signed edition. Now, on one of my used bookstore treks, I found beautiful, wonderful, pristine, gorgeous copies of these in hardcover. 2 of this one. Mistakes were made. But even though this one is signed, I decided I do not need to hang on to the physical paperbacks that I read. There's a nostalgia aspect of like the tangibility of reading a physical copy. And sometimes I have a hard time letting them go. But I love my new copies so much that I'm okay moving on. Speaking of mistakes made, I have a book club edition of Midnight Tides by Steven Erikson. I've been trying to collect the series in hardcover, and every time I order it, I end up with a book club edition, and they're smaller. And this one I got on Pango, and there's not really a return policy on Pango, so I'm kind of stuck with it. So I'm going to sell it. It's an okay edition. Like, the dust jacket is great, so if you just wanted it on the shelf, it would be good, but the pages are a bit, it's hard to tell, but like a little bit yellowed and blotted, which, by the way, was not pictured. I should have emailed first, but whatever. An ugly copy of Blood of Dragons by Robin Hobb, another US edition. My new ones are so nice. Stolen by Kelly Armstrong. It's book 2 in her Women of the Otherworld series, and I loved the first book. The first book was amazing. This one was not quite as good, but still up there, so the rest of the series peters out. Like, you've got a couple of hits, but even a hit for this series is only like a 3 or 4 star. So the first book was definitely the best, but I want better copies. Like, this copy's okay, but I kind of want like nice big trade paperback versions of at least the first book. This one was hard to part with. This is one of my favorite books, one of my favorite urban fantasies. It's called Blood Engine by T.A. Pratt. It's part of the Marla Mason series, and I have an identical copy of this, only it's signed, so I don't need to hang on to my first one, but I love that series. Oh yes, another one of the Andre Norton and Sasha Miller with one of the Luis Royo covers that I'm at peace letting go. Then I have the first 3 books in the Shadow of the App series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Empire in Black and Gold is the first one. I have joined the Broken Binding hype and have picked these up in hardcover. I'm so excited that they made them available in hardcover, but I had just purchased almost everything in these trade paperbacks, and I'm hanging on to the rest of the series until I get those hardbacks in, just in case, but eventually they will all go the way of that being sold. The entire Witcher series in trade paperback. And honestly, I actually really, really like these covers. Like the matte finish or whatever. But I just purchased all of these in those gorgeous Orbit editions with like the rainbow looking like spines when you line them all up. And I had just purchased these for my husband for Christmas. And decided that we don't need 2 copies. Like, we're just going to hang on to the hardcovers. As he put it, but we're a hardcover house, which I had never self-identified that way, but yeah, we are. We're a hardcover house. I'll probably sell these as a set. Rapture and Infidel, books 2 and 3 of the Beldam Apocrypha series. I read this with my patrons, and I liked it. It really brutal, hard to read, disgusting stuff, but awesome world building. Like, some of the afterthoughts that she has of world building, it's just so involved. Very creative author. She goes for shock value. I'm not sure I love that. But I was at a point where, do I buy the first book and complete the collection? Or do I just say, hey, I know I'm glad I read that, but I probably will never pick it up again? That's probably where I'm at. So I'm letting those go. I have Blood Cross by Faith Hunter. I don't know why I have just book 3. Somewhere along the line, I started the series. I think I read the first 2 and decided I was going to read the next one. But now we're in the age of digital, and I don't want just one copy of a book. I think if I end up liking it, then I'll go back and maybe rebuy it, but it'll be a while before I get around to it, so I don't want to hang on to this for that maybe eventuality. I have the Decoy Princess and the Princess at Sea by Dawn Cook. I may not unhaul these. I have to think about it. So Dawn Cook is a pen name for Kim Harrison. These are her fantasy works that she wrote before she wrote The Hollows. And I love her First Truth series, one of my all-time favorites. Highly recommended. This one was just okay. Like, kind of a Prince and the Pauper version. And when I finished this book, I don't think I liked the idea of where it was going in the second book. Don't ask me now where that was. I've totally forgotten. But it was just okay. And I was trying to make some space. I have Demon Awakens and Demon Spirit by R.A. Salvatore. This one was actually a pretty decent classic fantasy, really high stakes. I think if you like Faithful and the Fallen, this one would be a good one. There's not nearly as many characters, but the same kind of deadly atmosphere and moody vibes. And even, like, this is part of the Corona universe, I know. And the most recent set of installments, Child of a Mad God, that 3-book series, superb. So, I don't know, if you're looking for kind of a John Gwynne substitute, but don't mind a little bit more of a classic feel, like, this is really good. I got pissed off at the second book because I got so bored, but I think it's me, based on everybody I've talked to who love the series. It's probably just me. A Random Confessions of a Demon by Wright. It's urban fantasy that I'm letting go. Grasp the Stars by Jennifer Wingert. I love the Luis Royo cover on it, but based on the very lackluster reviews, I don't think I'll ever get around to that one. To Serve and Submit and A Pound of Flesh by Susan Wright. People were saying that this one was very similar to this series, which I love, but I read the first couple of chapters of the first book, and they're full of shit. Anybody who thinks that these 2 series are related, don't read the Phaedra trilogy for all the wrong reasons. A couple of the Wars of Light and Shadow series by Janie Wirtz. These are just fine. Artwork done by the author. Paperbacks, and I decided that if I ever read the series, I'm not going to want the little paperbacks. I'm probably going to try to collect the hardcovers. So I may as well preempt that and just let go of the ones I had now. When I bought those, there weren't digital options, so it's the only way I had to read them. Now, we got other things we can do. Got Orphans of Chaos and the rest of the series by John C. Wright. I've tried this book twice. Like, this is the first book. 2 times I ventured in, and both times I was bored to tears, confused. It's just something about it. It's one that I want to have read, and one that I've been hanging on to with high hopes, but I just have to admit to myself that if I've set it down twice, it's probably a bad sign. Spirit of Stone, second book in the Shadow League series by Maggie Fury. I loved this series. I read it back in high school. It was one of the most unique things I'd ever read. Some friends read it within the last couple of years on fantasy buddy reads, and they did not enjoy it at all. And so it's one of those where I personally loved what this series did for me, recommended it a whole bunch, but now that I've had more experience and more books that I've read, I'm like, was it that good? Or was it just like the uniqueness factor because I hadn't read a lot up to that point? It's hard to say, but I have the mass market paperback set, and I'm just going to let go of that trade paper. It's not worth trying to hunt down books 1 and 3. Lord Tophet, book 2 in the Shadow Bridge series by Gregory Frost. I evidently unhauled the first one, forgot I had done that, and then bought the second one. And instead of going through the hassle of trying to find the first one again just to justify the purchase of this one, I'm just going to let this one go. This is a whole thing. Grimy copies of books 2 and 3 in the Coldfire trilogy by C.S. Friedman. This author and we haven't really been getting along, and I have paperback versions of these, and I decided in a recent Read Burn Hoard that I don't really need those hardback editions. I went into his bookstore and didn't find anything fun, so I ended up with those just so I didn't walk away empty-handed. Like, I hate when I do that. Another copy of Blood of Dragons. Yes, I tried 3 times before I finally found one in condition that I liked. That one's actually not bad. Now, these ones were only like $20. I don't know. Somehow ended up with the second copy of Castiel's Servant by Jacqueline Carey. Purchased one. Found another one on Book Outlet and went, ooh! Here it is. My hardcover of Legacy of Steel by Matthew Ward. The editions that I ended up with, they're signed. And so this one was one I got from Book Outlet that I don't need anymore because I have nice signed editions. I have a bunch of romances by Jade Lee. I kept the Dragon trilogy, but these ones, I don't know. I don't read romance. And the only reason I'd hung on to these for so many years is because I had managed to collect all of them as strips. But I recently purged my romance section and got rid of almost everything. And this, I don't know. These are the ones that are the hardest to let go, but I'm pretty sure they're available digitally. So if I get a wild hair, I at least have access to them. And that's it. So many books. It'll be nice to have my floor back again, and I need a better system than just stacking them on the floor. You know, they've been stacked on the floor for a couple of months, and I haven't gone back and pulled anything back out to keep. So there is some comfort knowing that I'm only getting rid of the stuff that I definitely don't want to keep. Thank you for joining me on this one. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you on the next one.